Well, hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and if you're lucky enough to be doing it too. I'm Bushka on Blitz, and I'm back today to have a chat to you about the T-54. Now, some of you might say, well, that's not fair, you haven't done a review of the obscure Tier 2 tank that I really love driving, and I'm sorry about that. But this is just one of the things that needs to be talked about. I want to talk about my changing view on the T-54, a little bit of the history of the tank in-game, not in real life, because I'm nothing if not a gamer. And if you want a history lesson, you better go and see someone else. I've got lots of mates who are. And I also want to talk about a little bit of the tactics that are required to make this thing really sing. And I'd like to think that I can make it really sing, because I've had a lot of games in the 54, and the numbers have always been fairly good. And in recent times, I ran this quite a bit on the NA server over the weekend, and she performed like an absolute Bobby Dazzler. Now, the reason I really want to talk about this tank is still, after all this time, the two most commonly asked questions for me as a YouTuber are, which tank should I get, the Object 140 or the T62A? And which gun should I run on the T54? The 100mm D54 that leads to the T62A, or the 100mm D10 T2C, which I now use, and I'll show you why. Firstly, let's run through the equipment loadout that I'm using for this video. I'm using calibrated shells, I'm using supercharge, I'm using vertical stabilizer. The only important one on the second row, the Vitality, is the armor, the second tier equipment thing. You don't even need to spend money on the top two if you don't want to waste them, or you're trying to run it on a budget. And finally, optics are the big movers here. You can run the Traverse if you want, won't hurt you. I run the acceleration module on the second tier. Again, the third tier is kind of not really where it's at for this build. What do I want to talk about this gun for? There's two big differences in the way you go from the T-54. Once you get to the turret, once you grind up from the stock turret to the T-54 Mod 1949 turret, things start diverging. Things get very, very different. You have two guns. One of them leads to the T-62A and the other leads to the Object 140. The problem with in the past has been really that if you wanted to get the T-62A, you really had to grind the Object 140's gun, because the Object 140's gun was the best gun for this tank, and you wanted to keep this tank. Because in the past, you could run heat on this tank to pen absolutely everything. And that was fantastic, because that heat did 330mm of penetration, went through spaced armor, which was completely ridiculous, and gave you like a 3000 damage per minute tank, which was massive in a tier 9 medium. And you also had like tier 9 heavy armor. So, absolutely crackers. They fixed heat, although my mate Snake Eyes, who was going with me to do the Vegas Mobile Masters tournament stream in October, will tell you that they didn't fix heat. They broke heat, and the T-54, his beloved T-54, has never been the same since. And Snake's just an overpowered clown. The game has changed. The game has changed, and you've got to move on. When changes happen, you adapt or you die. And the changes to the game have been to give a whole lot more significance to the raw numbers of tanks. An AP pen is important now for a variety of reasons. But I'm going to show you a little clip here of me dealing with an IS-7, which is basically the most trollish, difficult to pen tank in the game, in my opinion. It's got all kinds of issues. And it's me dealing with it in a T-54, running all the penetration I can handle. Now that gives me 284mm of penetration on my AP rounds, running calibrated shells on this gun, the D54, which I'm running at the moment, and 284mm of pen on my heat rounds. Even with all those penetration numbers and hitting the weak points on the tank, it's still not always going in. Just a hat tip for young players: if you're desperate for penetration, do what I did there and put an AP round through the drive wheel of a tank if he's angled up to you and gives you that angle. That is going to be your easiest penetration mode on all tanks if they're angled up like that. If you can hit that drive wheel, that's your weak point. But even hitting the lower glacis on the IS-7 with heat at 284mm of pen doesn't go in all the time. It's just one of those things. And if you're using the original T-54 gun that pretty much everyone else has been using for years, and which I recommend using back in the day, the D10T2C you have 201 millimeters of pen, which is good. You can survive on 201 millimeters of pen. And I've done videos where I have survived on 201 millimeters of pen. But armor profiles have got tougher. The plus 5% to armor, while it doesn't give a raw plus 5%, and I've known about this for quite some time, but I just don't know how to explain it very well. It gives a plus 5% to a hidden value that you can't actually see, which does increase the likelihood of bouncing and all that kind of thing. Before we go any further, I should show you something. This is a retro mines game. And this is about all the tanks in the Russian tree that look like this T-54. It's a generic Russian mold. It's almost like they just poured the steel into the mold at the factory, and depending on what gun they put on them, they gave them a different name. In the old mines map, back in the day when the 54 was still our glorious overlord, the Russian tanks used to just dominate this area here. You could push up, and the topography of the map was quite different. So you could push up here, go hull down, and bounce lots and pour in lots of damage. This is a little state secret that I use all the time, which I'm really upset now that I probably shouldn't give away, but I am. Surprise, that poor old Super Pershing is looking for where I was, and I've pushed around this corner. I'm such a clown. I'm a dad. Why is that important? I'm going to show you a little video now that I've shot. Now, the Lerva is the tank that is shooting at me. You can see that angle. This is what the guys on that other corner can see. And this is what you can use. This tank only has 5 degrees of gun depression. What you want to do is basically push in and out with this tank so that the upper glacis is extremely red. Someone shoots. You don't have the gun depression, but you can come all the way out while they're on a reload. Take your time, put a nice easy shell into them, and then go back and do it again. You bait the shot with the upper glacis. This is really important as a tactic for all the Russian mediums and lights that have this armor profile. What am I talking about armor profile wise? Well, take a look at this in the garage. That's the 54. Angled up, lots of armor. It's a 54 lightweight, the 44, the 54 mod 1, the Object 140, the T62A. They've all got that particularly Russian look about them, and that's that upper glacis. If you've ever wondered why you couldn't get your T54 lightweight to work as the super armored tank that I keep saying it is, then it's because you're not angling it up like that, and people aren't seeing the toughest part of the armor. Angled up, that's crazy. So now I've done that. I've put myself in a position over here where I can use the pen, and you're going to see all these shots are with AP. Why is that important? Well, you do certainly get more dispersion on this gun. It's not as good dispersion-wise. And look, that's the angle again. I'm just presenting a strong turret and a strong upper glacis, and it's impossible for them to actually pen anywhere else, to shoot anywhere else. Dispersion-wise, the D54 isn't as good as the original D10 T2C that everyone used to use. That has 0.317 base dispersion after all the bells and whistles are applied. This one has 0.353. Where this one really wins is penetration-wise. At the moment, we're running the build that has 230 millimeters of penetration. It only does 2,616 DPM. But you're going to see throughout the course of these videos, I have absolutely no problems pouring in DPM. That's because I never really have to switch to heat unless it's on a super tough target. And why is that important? Because it means I get to keep my effective DPM of 2,616 at all times. If you switch to heat to pen on the T54, you get a round that is a lot easier to get rid of, like with spaced armor or tracks that gets eaten, and it does 2,469 DPM. That's on the old T54 gun, the D10 T2C. I'm running the D54. That is a very different 100mm gun. Now, of course, you can run calibrated shells in the other rounds, and I highly recommend that you do. That takes your penetration values up to 211. I'm still at 230, which is 19mm more pen, and it's really important. I find that that extra pen is absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. The ability to pour in pen. I'll give you this concept, and this is a really simple concept. High floor, low ceiling. What do I mean by that? If you're running the 100mm D10 T2C, you have 201mm of pen. Your floor, your lowest potential output is just about zero. If you run into someone with 250mm of armor, you're going to have to go to heat. And if they have spaced armor like that IS-7 did, or they have an E100 side scraping or something, you may actually do no damage at all. The the spaced armor thing is big when you're firing heat rounds, because spaced armor and tracks eat heat rounds. So the floor on that gun is very, very low, and the potential is enormously high. If you run into a Borsig, you're going to do full damage to him every time with AP, and you're going to have 3,000 damage per minute. What I like to think of with this gun is that you just have a lower ceiling. So your potential damage output in the best optimal circumstances with 230 millimeters is lower. But your floor, your base damage output, when you're faced with the toughest opponents, is much, much higher. So overall, it's a more consistent damage output. And that means you're more adaptable to more situations against different armor profiles. And you can be more aggressive in all kinds of games, safe in the knowledge that you have the most likely penning gun available to you in the game. And it's a big part of why I adore tanks like the Carnarvon, because the Carnarvon has both amazing gun handling and amazing gun penetration numbers and amazing damage output. So you can roll around in that thing and suffer absolutely no negatives, regardless of the target that you're facing. And it's a big part of the sea change that I've undergone in the way I view the T-54's gun and the way I suggest you run your equipment loadout. It's one of the reasons why the 62A's new output is so insane to me. They gave you a buff to gun dispersion, and they gave you a buff to aim time. So you're able to then take a gun that has incredible DPM already, and incredible accuracy and incredible aim time, and turn it into a gun that also has fantastic penetration, because you can run calibrated shells with little to no negligible loss, really. And you get the same mobility, the same armor and everything else, and you also get penetration, and you get shell velocity, and you get everything in it. And that's the kind of mode that I'm in with the T-54. The dispersion's the big downside on this tank, but you can see, for the most part, I drive it pretty aggressively. And when you've got all the provisions and everything loaded up on the tank, it doesn't make a huge difference, because really your dispersion's manageable. 0.353. You can run supercharge, which is what I run, and vertical stabilizer, which gives you really, really good penetration numbers, much better shell velocity numbers. I think that gun lane drive is probably one of the more overrated pieces of equipment in the game for certain tank types. You can see I'm not having a whole lot of problems penning, and I'm certainly not having a whole lot of problems aiming or getting shots off and doing the right thing. I'm doing lots and lots of damage, and I'm doing it running this gun with 230 millimeters of pen. High floor, lower ceiling. And sometimes, you know, we always like to run the option that is maxing out the damage, which is fair enough, because maxing out damage is important. But when you've got 201 millimeters of pen, particularly for guys that don't know the tanks very well and aren't really the best players in the world, more pen will help you. More pen will mean that more shots go in, and higher effective DPM is important. Now, this game in particular is very, very different to the other games you've seen so far, where I've been just nuts out, silly aggressive, because there is this whole meme or trope that goes around that I am a sniper and I don't do anything else. And that's because you see games like this and you get idiots like the guys on the other team who get wrecked and spend the whole game abusing me for being a coward, or not the whole game, but you'll see what I mean if you watch the chat. And yet I would challenge them to tell me how I could have been more effective in this game. And this is the T-54 in its current state, at its finest. Using all the tools that God gave it, like the excellent camouflage, the fantastic mobility, the brilliant gun penetration. Well, not brilliant, but it's really good now. It's like quite solid. If you run it in this mode, it gets just enough penetration to get it across the line, pretty much versus all targets. Even that ST1, I sacrifice straight away. I go straight to heat, and I've got 284 millimeters of pen, which is nearly 300 millimeters of pen, which is well above what you're going to get on the other tank, even running your calibrated shells. And that shot doesn't go in on the other gun. That shot absolutely does not go in on the other gun. I mean, if you don't have 230 mils on that ST1 there, that is a really, really tough angle to penetrate. And I've just gone to heat there, and you can see Still doing the business, just clocking up damage, slowly ticking the ball over. That Foch isn't happy. You can see him. Go sniper. He's very upset with the idea that someone is sniping. Mind you, the Foch is at the back of the map in his spawn, sniping down that alleyway, having a whinge about someone doing the same thing to him. I mean, it's just irony, okay? I'm not going to get carried away with it. I'm just going to talk about the tank. You'll see various comments over the course. I don't know, is that Bushka? This is like a constant thing on the NA server. Everyone, I get into a game and people start debating whether it's me or not. And they just spend their whole time getting killed while they debate whether it's me. This is just weird. It is like one of those odd things. Look at the camo on this beast. I love it. Because they're behind bushes and I'm behind bushes, they just can't see me. And we don't muck around here. We're unspotted, so we're just going to keep pushing around. Pushing up to try and help the rest of these guys who are left. The 54E one's pushed down. I'd just like to point out that that's probably not a good move. When the whole team is dying down there and you've gone up top, if there's the Foch, yeah, he loves that. Have a taste. When the whole team is dying down there and you've gone up top and you push down, yeah, he's really not happy, despite the fact he was in his own spawn. Good on you, mate. Enjoy coming second. You tend to just give them a greater opportunity to belt you. It's very much the case. And this gun, you've seen, it's all AP rounds. Like, it's just nearly all AP rounds. And it's a really solid tank. And the floor is lower, but it's consistent. I don't have to worry about penning. There's always a spot on those tanks that I'm able to pen into. And it means that constantly I'm just getting these shots off and I'm hull down again, just giving that Object 704 no angles. This is that shot that I showed you up. Look at where the tank is at all times. It's angled up. I'm hull down, angled up. No easy shots for these guys. I'm not giving them any opportunity to get in those easy shots. And if they want to push up, that's fine. I'm now going to use the mobility of the tank. I'm going to push back. I've had lovely shots from the corners. The rest of the team's done its job. It's kept them locked into place. It's given me targets. And now I'm going to use the mobility and the hit points that I've preserved on this tank the entire game to just go and basically smash these guys. Because I'm a T-54. I've got really, really good armor. I've got really good mobility. I've got 230 millimeters of pen. And I'm able to actually put shots in if I aim correctly, which would be nice there. Foshy, attack as a man, he says. That's the business, mate. You just keep enjoying your time talking while dead. There's 3 tanks there. I've just picked up the object. That's cool. The IS-3 is coming up the top. He's the only one I'm worried about. 230 millimeters of pen, straight through the front. Didn't have to go to heat. Makes it very, very easy. And then into the side of the spaced armor. Don't have to worry about getting through there. Very, very easy. Around, I'm leaving the ST1 alone. Isolating the Object 704. Unfortunately for him, he blows that shot. Straight around into the side of him. ST1's panicking. Blows that shot, and we roll up here. We could have run adrenaline. It would have worked, but it doesn't make any difference. We get things done here. And we get the win, and we get just about all the bling you can get on a T-54. Don't get the mastery, but we do very well. And that's the T-54 nowadays, guys, for me. That's it. The new gun, the D-54, running it with all the calibrated shells and everything else. We've got the first class, top gun, high caliber. I think that's the sniper award or whatever it is. 6 kills and the Kolomanovs. It's hard to argue, really, with that this tank isn't effective. The numbers on NA for me have been fantastic running this build. It's got armor still. It's got that Russian speed. It's got that Russian hull down ability. It's got great penetration. And it's got great camo. Knock yourselves out. Do yourselves a favor. Stick with the old girl. She's every bit as fun as she used to be. I've really enjoyed going back and having a look at these old tanks. The M46 Patton I did, the Type 61, the M103, now the 54, the E50. Get it while it's hot. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed that. Until next time, look after yourselves and stay safe on the battlefield.